This is Dr. Kraus with a quick video on basic shell commands. This video should apply for people who are new to Raspberry Pi or Crostini on a Chromebook, or possibly the Bash shell that is part of Windows 10. I'm mainly thinking about my students who are using Macs and want to learn to use the terminal to do things like compiling C code. So first of all, you might be asking yourself, why should I do this? So first of all, I'm going to use the terms shell and terminal and command line kind of interchangeably. They all mean the same thing to me. So certainly, most users are more comfortable with a desktop and a mouse. So why would you want to take the time to do this? And I would say mostly that the shell or the terminal, especially from a Mac point of view, is simply more efficient. Like, there's lots and lots of powerful things that you can do with a mouse and a GUI desktop, but there's some things that you can do better or only do from the terminal, and there's just a ton of powerful stuff. So the neat thing about OSX in my mind is that it is built on a BSD or Unix in the background, and there is a ton of open source software that has been developed over the previous decades that can do all kinds of things, and those things either only work from the terminal or work best from the terminal. There's also a story, if you want to read it, called Why Bother on linuxcommand.org that basically says that one terminal command solved days and days of work. Have a look at that if you are not yet convinced. So part of the issue as far as efficiency goes is if I have a mouse. Maybe I got some super fancy mouse that has a bunch of buttons, but it's still less than 10. And so there's different ways that I can click or right click or triple click or whatever. But there's just not that many different ways to do that. Whereas your keyboard has probably 100 or more buttons on it. And if you just did 3-letter commands using only lowercase letters, 26 to the third gives you 17,596 possibilities. So there's just the ability to do a whole lot of stuff. But the downside is you do have to learn what some of the different commands are. So that's where this video comes in. I want to teach you some of the basic, most common commands for navigating the terminal and getting stuff done. Most of them are kind of like this. There's a command that is required. That's a few letters or the name of a function or something. There are some optional flags. These usually have hyphens in front of them. And then there's sometimes there's either required or optional positional arguments. So this is just some kind of input that's at the end or after the flags, and the program just knows what to do that. So for example, the command ls lists what's in your current directory. So you could just do the command by itself and it would list some stuff. And actually, let me flip over to my terminal and I can show you this. So if I am in my home directory and I say ls, it lists everything that's in my directory. But if I said ls minus alh, now I've provided it's all long, human. Those are all different options. And now I get a slightly different format for listing stuff. So that's with a flag. And then if I also provide a positional argument, it now tells me that there are no C files in my home directory, which actually, as much as I'm teaching my students about C, I'm secretly a Python person. So basic argument with flags, positional argument, and then flags plus positional argument. And so the positional argument gets me more information, and the positional argument is the startup high, so that gets me specific things that I want the terminal to list, and then the flags give me more information. Yeah. So that is your standard format for any command. Now let's talk about some specific command. I would say these are some of your essential commands for navigating the terminal. You need to list what directory you're currently in. You need to be able to change directories. You need to be able to print the directory that you're working in. And then you're going to need to use your manual and find. So I already kind of went through ls. ls is maybe the most common or second most common. So one of the things that's going to happen is if you're trying to use the terminal to get some stuff done, you need to know where are the files that I want to work with. And so ls lets me list what's in my current directory. And so for example, if I was trying to compile some C code using GCC, if ls star.c returns nothing, then there's nothing GCC can do for me in this directory. So ls allows me to list the contents of a directory. By default, things that start with a dot are hidden. If that's so when I say ls, it lists all of these things. But if I say ls minus a, now it says list all of them. And so now if I go to the top of this list, there's a bunch of things that start with a dot, which is the Linux or Unix convention for hiding files. And so those are hidden files that aren't there unless I use the minus a flag. And then I can do a positional argument that shows a pattern, and the asterisk would be expanded to anything. And so the most common flags in my mind are the negative A, which shows all files, the negative L, which uses a long format to show me the size of files and the permissions and that kind of thing, and negative H converts things from bytes into kilobytes, megabytes, and gigabytes, which is a whole lot easier for us to read. And so I'm either always doing ls star dot something, and the star doesn't have to be first, it could be in the middle. And I think you can have more than one star, or ls minus alh, and then ls minus alh star dot something. So those are different commands. Now, if when I open up my terminal, by default it starts in my home directory, which on my Mac is /users/crossry. On a Linux machine, it would be /home/username. But this isn't necessarily where I have the files that I want to work with. So if cd is change directory, and so I want to change directory to a different folder. And now I'm in my EGR 107 folder, and I eventually want to get to C code and the terminal, and so now I have CD'd into that directory. And I can see what's here. I could also, see what C files are available, and I could see how big they are. It's 70 bytes. It's a gigantic hello world file, and what the permissions on that are. So CD is change directory. Now, if I just type CD with nothing else, it takes me back to my home folder. Otherwise, like I said, I want to go here and here. And tab completion is a really powerful tool. So if I type part of a file name and hit tab, it'll try to find a match. And if there's more than one match and I hit the tab button, it'll show me my options. So CD, super basic, super powerful. If I want to get back to my home directory, I just type CD by itself. If I want to go to a specific folder, I type CD space and then the name of the folder that I want to go into, and it can be a multi-folder path done as one argument if I need. Absolutely take advantage of tab completion unless you really like typing long file names. Then PWP is print working directory, and that just tells me where I am on my file system. Additionally, there's a negative capital P flag that gives me the full extended path. So it turns out that 107 Kraus only W20 is a link, a symbolic link or a shortcut to this full path. But because I need to go to this path kind of a lot this semester, I made a symbolic link, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So PWD tells me to print the working directory. So if I first fire this thing up and I'm like, where am I and why can't I find anything? And then if I'm not sure what that is, probably the PWP, if there's no symbolic links, it would give the same thing with and without the negative P. So PWD is print working directory, tells me where I am on the file system. and the most valuable flag in my mind is the -P. Man is short for manual, and it gives you a lot of information about what a command actually does. And it will pretty much always give you way more information than you could ever possibly want. But that's now some commands also support a --help, which is usually, no, that was not supported. It just told me I had an illegal flag. But then providing an illegal flag tells me this is how you actually use it. So apparently these are all flag options for LS, 90% of which I don't know what they mean. But the man would tell you if you wanted to know. Not the man, but the manual, using the man command. The man's just trying to hold you down. Yeah, so take advantage of man if you're ever really stuck on what flags to use for a certain command or whatever. And then, excuse me, maybe the final kind of essential one is the find. So ls lists the contents of the current directory, which is useful. But find, I tell it what directory to start with, and then it's going to search all possible subfolders that would match a certain file. So even though there's no .c files in my home directory, it's going to start searching for every .c file in all of my subfolders. Although it also gives this annoying message if certain folders are not searchable because of permissions or whatever. So even though I don't love C, there's lots of C files buried in different parts of my subfolders. So find is super powerful in that it's searching for, so for example, I could go to this folder I was just talking about, and if I forgot where I had stored some of my C files, these are all the C files that are in my EGR 107 Winter 20 folder, and I got a bunch of those. Yeah, so find, super powerful in that it's searching all the subfolders to help you match a certain name. And then maybe it's important to have something besides just a star, but more of a certain pattern that you're looking for. So find, starting in the current directory, which is what the dot is for, and then -name, quote, and then everything that you want to match in the file name there. So those are what I would consider some of the essential navigation functions. Here are a few others that you might also find useful. So CP is how you copy a file. So CP and then the existing file name space what you want the new file to be called, and it would make a copy of that file. So if I was in my C terminal and I've got hello world, I can copy hello world.c to supyo.c, and now I've got a copy of that. And that's hilarious if you watched my Hello World video on compiling C code from the terminal. Can also recursively copy a folder if you need to do that. Whereas move, instead of making a copy, is sort of like a rename or move a file to a different place. So if I said move supyo to other file.c, the difference now is that supyo doesn't exist anymore. It has been moved to a different place. I could also then move other file to my home folder, and it will no longer exist here. But if I go here, it's now in my home folder. RM is how I get rid of a file. So I could rm other file.c, and now it doesn't exist anymore. You can also, if you're really sure that you know what you're doing, recursively remove a folder. But this will nuke the entire folder without asking you any further questions. Well, I guess that's R and F kind of together. So you can do an RM -RF folder name if you're absolutely certain that you want to get rid of a folder. But know that that's not going to ask. If you're sure, it's just going to delete entire folders. So use that one very sparingly and carefully. If you need to create a new folder, so if I said make dir temp, I now have a folder called temp in my C terminal working directory. And then, for example, if I said rm temp, it would say I can't do that, it's a directory. But if I said -r, I mean remove it recursively, and now it's gone. So makedir creates new folders. LN is how you create a symbolic link. So I said that my 107 underscore Kraus underscore W20 was a link. So if I went to my home directory and said LN -S, and I needed to go to my Google Drive and my teaching folder, and 107 W20, and then the name of what I want to call my link. So I call this W20 107. And now in my home folder, I can do that, and I'm in a folder that has all of my EGR 107 stuff. And then I could, if I needed to get rid of that, unlink, and now that folder doesn't exist anymore. So symbolic links are sort of like shortcuts, but they work from the terminal, and that can make them super powerful and super friendly. If you created a script and you wanted it to be executable like a shell script, or even a Python file that was supposed to act like a shell script, then chmod, I don't even know what that's short for. Let's see if we can ask the man on that one. Changes file mode. So chmod has probably changed mode. So you can make a file executable so that you could run it from the shell script, which is a super powerful thing to be able to do. So the most common would be a chmod a+rx and then the file name. So this means anybody can read and execute this file, and then your shell script becomes executable. And then this one's maybe just kind of obscure and not as useful. But sometimes you accidentally create a folder using some other account, or maybe as the super user, and you want to change who owns that file. And so chown is the way to change the owner of a file name to a specific user. Okay, hopefully that helps you get started. Good luck.